In the heart of the vast Oregon wilderness, winter's breath coated every branch, every rock, and every path with a sheet of icy white. The forest was silent, save for the faint rustling of the wind weaving through the pines. But under that quiet surface, something stirred, something no one in the village nearby would have ever imagined. A massive brown bear named Thorn moved slowly through the snow, his breath curling in frosty clouds. Thorn was no ordinary bear. Old scars across his snout and shoulder told stories of survival, of countless battles with nature and man alike. Yet today, Thorn's powerful body moved with a strange tension. His nose twitched, catching a scent he couldn't ignore. It was the smell of fear. As Thorn pushed through the heavy snowdrifts, his sharp senses guided him to a clearing. There, under a leafless oak, was a small figure, a little girl, tied to a tree. Her clothes were torn, her face pale from the cold, and her eyes, wide, wet, and desperate, locked onto Thorn's massive form as he approached. For a long second, neither moved. The girl, no older than 7, shivered violently, her tiny body trembling not just from the cold, but from the terror of seeing a bear up close. Thorn let out a low grunt, more curious than threatening, tilting his head to the side as if trying to understand why a child was left like this in the middle of nowhere. The girl let out a soft whimper, her voice cracking. "Please," she whispered, barely audible under her breath. Thorn took another cautious step forward, his massive paws sinking into the snow with soft thuds. His black eyes darted to the coarse rope binding the child to the trunk. His large nose sniffed around the knots, and something primal, maybe instinct, maybe something deeper, stirred inside him. He remembered. Years ago, when Thorn was a cub, he had been caught in a trap, a cruel, rusted snare that had bitten deep into his leg. A man, an old hunter, had found him, freed him, and left without a word. Thorn had survived because someone chose not to kill, not to turn away. Now here before him was another creature trapped, another life hanging by a thread. Slowly, Thorn lifted one massive paw and gently scraped at the rope. The girl flinched but didn't scream. Tears ran down her cheeks, her body frozen stiff from hours in the cold. Thorn's claws, sharp but controlled, worked at the knot. It wasn't perfect. He wasn't a human. But the rope began to fray. Suddenly, there was a loud snap in the distance. A human voice, sharp and angry, echoed through the trees. "Get back here, you little brat!" The girl's face twisted in panic. She shook her head weakly, whispering, "No! No!" Thorn froze, his ears flicking toward the sound. His body tensed, ready to protect or run. He recognized the harshness in that voice. It belonged to a predator far more dangerous than himself. The bushes parted, and a figure emerged. A man, ragged and wild-eyed, stormed into the clearing. His eyes widened in disbelief as he took in the sight. A massive bear standing over the girl he had tied up. "What the hell?" Without hesitation, the man raised the rifle slung over his shoulder. But Thorn was faster. With a thunderous roar, the bear lunged, knocking the man off balance. The gun flew from his hands, skidding across the snow. The man screamed, scrambling backward, eyes wide in sheer terror. The girl, still trembling, watched as Thorn loomed over the man, teeth bared, a deep growl rumbling from his chest. But instead of attacking, Thorn stayed still, a guardian, a wall between the helpless and the predator. The man scrambled to his feet and ran, slipping and stumbling through the snow, leaving the gun behind. His curses faded into the trees as he fled into the wilderness. Breathing heavily, Thorn turned back to the girl. Her lips quivered. "Thank you," she whispered. Using what little strength she had left, she lifted a trembling hand and placed it gently on Thorn's thick fur. It was the tiniest gesture, but Thorn felt it. A connection, a spark of trust. The bear nudged her gently with his nose, urging her forward. She took a shaky step, then another. Thorn walked slowly beside her, each heavy paw step like a promise. "You are not alone." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the snow. Night was coming, and with it, the biting cold of the wild. But Thorn knew a path, a cave he had used in his younger days, warm and hidden from the wind. With the girl leaning weakly against his side, they began the slow, careful journey away from the clearing, away from the place of cruelty toward a place of safety. What neither of them knew was that this moment, this night, would change both of their lives forever. The cold night air cut sharply through the trees as Thorn, the massive bear, led the weak little girl deeper into the forest. His thick fur bristled with each gust of wind, but he didn't falter. The child beside him was fragile, barely able to walk after hours tied to that tree, her small hands shivering, her steps dragging. Thorn knew, deep in the instincts buried in his bones, that time was running out. They reached a rocky slope where, hidden between the stones, lay a shallow cave. It wasn't much, but it was dry, shielded from the biting wind, and held the faint scent of warmth from when Thorn had last sheltered there. Without hesitation, Thorn nudged the girl forward, watching as she stumbled inside and collapsed onto the dry leaves at the back of the cave. She let out a soft whimper, curling into a ball, her tiny body trembling uncontrollably. Tears glistened on her face, but her eyes, those wide, terrified eyes, slowly flicked up to the giant creature watching over her. Despite every instinct screaming at her to be afraid, she felt something else: safety. Outside, the wind howled, carrying distant sounds, the cracking of branches, the crunch of heavy boots in snow. The man who had tied her up hadn't gone far. Thorn turned, stepping back into the cold, his sharp ears flicking, his nose twitching as he scented the air. He stood still, every muscle in his huge frame tensed, waiting. His black eyes scanned the dark tree line. Somewhere out there, the threat remained, and Thorn knew. If the man returned, the girl wouldn't survive. Inside the cave, the girl huddled against the stone wall, her breath shallow, her mind racing. Why had this bear saved her? How could an animal be so gentle? She pressed her hands into the leaves, feeling the chill seep from the ground into her bones. She was so cold, so tired. But then she heard a soft sound, a low huff. Turning her head weakly, she saw Thorn returning, stepping inside carefully, his large body blocking the entrance. He sat down heavily, his massive shape almost completely filling the small space. The girl watched, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion, as the bear lowered himself slowly to the ground, curling his thick body slightly around her. She reached out a trembling hand, resting it on his rough fur. Warm, so warm. Outside, the night deepened, the wind screamed, and the danger grew. In the nearby village, alarms had been raised. A child missing, frantic parents, a search party gathering under the pale moonlight. But the villagers knew the woods were dangerous at night. They feared the wild animals, the cold, and, perhaps most of all, the man they suspected was behind the girl's disappearance. Back in the cave, Thorn's ears perked up again. Crunch, crunch. Heavy, deliberate steps in the snow. The man was back. Slowly, silently, Thorn rose to his feet. The girl stirred, letting out a soft, frightened whimper. But the bear gave a low, quiet grunt, almost like a shushing sound, and stepped forward to stand guard at the cave's mouth. A dark figure emerged from the trees, eyes wild with anger, a rifle slung across his chest. "There you are," the man hissed under his breath, eyes narrowing as he spotted the child huddled inside the cave. "Thought you could run? Stupid brat." But then the man's gaze shifted. His eyes locked onto the massive form of Thorn, who stood like a wall of muscle and fury between the man and the girl. The man's smirk faded. "Get out of the way, beast," he snarled, lifting the rifle. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. The moon hung high above, casting silver light onto the snow-covered clearing. The girl, her heart pounding in her chest, watched as Thorn growled low, the deep rumble vibrating through the ground. His sharp teeth glistened, his massive frame bristling with power. The man took a step forward, raising the gun, but he underestimated the bear. With a deafening roar, Thorn lunged forward. The rifle fired, a wild, panicked shot that missed entirely, and the man stumbled back, screaming in terror as the bear charged. Snow flew in all directions as the massive animal slammed into the man, knocking him flat onto his back. The rifle clattered uselessly to the ground. The girl clapped her hands over her mouth, eyes wide with shock. Thorn stood over the man, teeth bared, snarling ferociously. The man let out a pitiful sob, trembling violently, realizing he had no chance, no escape. But Thorn did not kill. With one final, earth-shaking roar, he drove the man scrambling to his feet, slipping and sliding through the snow, running as fast as he could into the trees, never once daring to look back. Thorn watched him go, his breathing heavy, his black eyes sharp. Then slowly, the bear turned and walked back to the cave. The girl let out a shaky breath, tears spilling freely down her cheeks. As Thorn settled beside her again, she buried her small face into his thick fur, whispering one word,